welcome everybody to another episode, another show here on Hbtv with your host Harry Bulgarian. If this is your first time to join us here on this channel, or if this is your 18th time as a repeated viewer, I do thank you for your time. It's an early edition today because my guest, Master Swordsman David Achilleus, this is the only time I can actually get him here at 3:30 p.m. on the West Coast time. He's out in Missouri, over there by the Ozarks, I believe, but not too close to it, but in that area. So we're just going to talk about, his art. And this show is called My Journey. I'm planning to bring on as many martial artists as I can get in contact with, and just talk about their art, talk about their journey as far as being a practitioner, an instructor. And in this case, with David Achilleus, he has had the opportunity to run and open his own studio and practice for many years and have a lot of instructors there with him. So I do thank you again for your time. So without further ado, help me welcome Mr. David Achilleus. David, can you hear me?
Man, I can hear you, brother. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for taking the time with joining me on the show here on HBTV called My Journey. Uh, Obviously, you are my special guest. So do me a quick favor. Just tell us a little bit about who David Achilleus is, a little bit about the name of your art and what you do, and all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. My name is David Achilleus, and for, I don't know, 30 years, 32, 33, 34 years, I have called myself a fencer. So I want you to use the imagination machine and this beautiful face of mine as a little 12-year-old boy. My journey started with envy. Believe it or not, I know I am a paragon of virtue, and you can't find really, anything bad to say about me as a person. But originally, I was flawed. I was human, and there was a kid in my school who was bragging about taking fencing lessons, and I think I responded to a call in the universe to balance that out. I thought that it could be better. And so I joined up, and it was literally, I never stopped. So that was seventh or eighth grade. My mom's going to call me out on this at some point, but I was about 12, 13, and I have never stopped since. It's been a long journey. As I'm sure you've experienced with a lot of your guests, I have seen children grow into men. I have seen marriages. I have seen children. I've seen, friends divorced, and all of this within the context of people who I count both as my students and my friends and part of that family. So it's just been crazy. It's been a crazy 3 decades.
Man, that's great. Not a lot of people who can say that actually after stepping into something like this. But so in the beginning, was this in Missouri that you first started training this art? And please tell us about some of your early, I'm going to say instructors, or I don't know what you would call them, masters in this art, but just tell us a little bit about that time frame.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Harry, because part of my life is like being an apologist for Missouri. It's really bizarre. And I know, we we got Ferguson, we got Ozarks and meth labs. We got a lot of crazy publicity, right? It's not like people are queuing to get inside these borders. But let me just say a couple of things. We got T.S. Eliot. We got Sarah Teasdale. We got the Blue Note original jazz clubs of Gaslight Square. We got just across the river, we got Miles Davis. The list goes on and on of the talent that comes out of this place, and it is beautiful. So let's just keep that in mind too. So I am from Missouri. I'm a ninth generation Missourian. My kids are the next generation. So, yeah. So, with respect to fencing, the connection there is that there are a lot of odd connections to martial arts in Missouri. Fans of martial arts in your show may have heard of Dave Lowry. He wrote a phenomenal book years ago called Autumn Lightning, his journey into the Japanese Koryu of Kenjutsu. Where did he find his first Japanese Kenjutsu master?
Mm-hmm.
Springfield, Missouri. So
Wow.
there are a lot of strange coincidences wrapped up in this very kind of place in the earth. Um, but my journey actually started. So I responded to this kid in my class who said he was taking classes. I said I can do that too. I went, and it was a kind of a, at the time, what we would now refer to as a recreational
Mm-hmm.
club,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was part of what do they call it? Continuing education in the local school district, um, and it was modeled mostly after what people know as Olympic fencing, sport fencing.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know, there was just something about it, and I can talk about that a little bit more. But that something about it was my personal agency in the world. Like, it was like the first time as a 12, 13-year old human being where I realized that I moved through space and I had a body and I could control it.
Mm.
Other people kind of had to accept that and respond to that too. That's a powerful lesson for a kid. And as I know, you're a father, Harry, and your girls are precious to you. I'm a father. One thing that you want your kids to have is that sense of autonomy and personhood, and to have that focused, conscious selfhood, right? You want them to have that confidence in themselves. And this is not the kind of schlocky confidence that you find on a flyer for, Don's karate dojo type thing. This is like real awareness,
Hey
like
man, those flyers do give me confidence, brother.
they're uh they're sneaky, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they are.
Man, those pretty colors. Those pretty colors. But that was really the hook. That was the
Yeah.
hook. It was like it felt like me. I felt like, for first time in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like what it was like, it was supposed to be like, to be me. And I think that's why I never stopped. And I think that's why I've been kind of an evangelist in a way for this type of movement, and
Mm-hmm.
to try to bring more people into mastering it and understanding it and comprehending it, and to democratize it.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's face it, the skeleton, not so in the closet anymore, is this has deep roots in European aristocracy
Sure.
and colonialism and racism, and that's just never been anything that I will stand or sit for. And there were some easy things early on to do to kind of start rectifying that. And I obviously fell short, but um, yeah, it's really important. It was something that just latched onto me, and I couldn't stop, really.
Well,
And the only
and
thing that's really done that has been COVID,
yeah,
and moving to the farm. But
yeah. I mean, it's just interesting. You started at such a young age. During that same time, I'm only a couple years older than you, but um, at that point in my life as well, as you can see my shirt here, you can call it Kali, you can call it Arnis, you can call it Eskrima. Um, is I guess are the Filipino martial arts type of fencing with fighting with sticks, right?
yeah,
And
man.
so, but for yourself, like for me, um, I've probably seen fencing, like you said, in the Olympics, the Olympic arena. Uh, not too, wasn't too, that I know of growing up, not too popular with the kids my age group. Not too popular with even some of the teenagers and young adults here. So just you stepping into that rec center, I'm sure, or you possibly went to the same school as your colleague or as your classmate. But I mean, you were talking about like this is the first time you're able to manipulate your movements and your body and recognize that, yeah, hey man, I can really do something with this, and like you said, people recognize it. But like that first instance, you walking in, I don't know how big your classes were, and again, going back to your instructors, what was it about them that uh,
Hmm.
kept going with this? A lot of kids will probably stop in 6 months, but you're saying this is 30 years for you. So from that early age, I don't know if you had any siblings that were in it, but I mean, what else was it about just being there, especially in those four between those four walls?
Um, so I could probably point to a dynamic personality, and to be historically accurate and fair, Robert McPherson was my first instructor. But what he had more than technical ability, and this is, you know, being kind here, for delicate reasons, um, was his dynamic, and infectious, approach. And like I think that, and maybe to this day, deep down, Bob has been through some stuff in his life, like we all have. But I think he still cares about it in the same way. But at that time, 30 years ago, we were all younger and we all had more energy. And there was just something, his dynamic tension, and it was infectious, and it brought me in. But another thing, Harry, was the fact that I was the youngest.
Hmm.
And combat arts, especially what I'm talking about with you today, are mano y mano. This
Hmm.
is not group warfare melee type stuff. This is one on one. And so, a young man working through these techniques and developing these skills against men literally
Hmm.
2 or 3 times older than him, that's a power trip, baby. Especially when you start learning and your body starts understanding, we got this.
Hmm.
And because it's a great equalizer. It's truly, there's nothing that 40-year-old guy, when you're 15, he can't do anything.
Hmm.
You can literally bring a grown man down. And that's something that, a lot of commenters have talked about it with weapon systems. Generally, weapons are an equalizing
Hmm.
force, in single combat like that. The Colt 45, it's part of its history in this country. It's the great equalizer. But weapon systems, of every type and age do the same thing. So when you're a 15-year-old boy, or girl, and you're given a weapons platform that you're allowed to safely, in real time,
Hmm.
with real force,
Hmm.
engage with another human being. And there, I'll just digress real quick. I want your audience to point out any other martial arts system that can make that claim, because I'll wager that mine is the only one where you can engage in real time, full force combat with another person with the actual tool intended for that use. Now, you can get close, but I'm not talking about padding up
Hmm.
and rolling around, and somebody complaining that you pinched their finger. I'm talking about full contact, real time, uh, combative practice. Um, so that's a power trip, and it's a positive one, I think. And so that was another one of those things that just said, you can't stop doing this. This is too important, too significant. You gotta keep going. And of course, I didn't talk to myself like that when I was a kid. I do now. I talk to myself all the time, but when I was a kid, it just made sense, right? It just
Yeah.
made sense. This is awesome. I got to keep doing this, and watching people respond to whatever talent or skill, the hard work I put into it. It was real. It was
Yeah.
palpable. You don't have that I mean, where else as a kid? Maybe if you're a performer, if you're lucky and you get on stage and people clap, or I've heard other people, popular comedians and perform, who say similar things, right? Is hearing people laugh, or making my mother laugh. That's a common one you hear from many of our generation's comedians. That's a powerful thing. It's something that like activates part of their personality.
Yeah.
So those would be the two things I think. That would be the two things that really latched onto me early, where Bob's infectious, energy,
Hmm.
uh, and he made it fun, and then just my self-awareness. This is my holy cow, I'm alive.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. And again, everybody, thank you for joining us here on HBTV. I'm your host, Harry Bugarin. The show is called My Journey, and my special guest tonight is David Achilleus, and we're talking about his art, a form of fencing as well. So we got a couple people here in the chat. At any time you guys want to, chime in, ask David a question, feel free. Just tell him hello. Tell me hello. Let's keep the comments PG and all that good stuff, and be respectful. We do have feelings here on this show, and my guests as well. But yeah, just feel free to chime in. I can field your guys' questions here in the live chat as I'm seeing this. So really quick, so for all of us, kind of break down like the basics of fencing. Now you can go ahead and feel free to talk about differentiating between the sport aspect of it versus the combat aspect, but just give us an idea about the art, objectives as far as, once you see the person in front of you, what are you trying to do? And just really quick, and this could be another conversation, or you'll probably see it from other guests that are going to be on here. As far as your question, as far as you fielding about, you put it up to any martial art regarding what you said earlier. I think the Filipino martial art kind of does a lot of the things that you were talking about, being, mano a mano, get in there, not just pat it up and rolling around, but really be in full contact with what they do. So hopefully I can get one of my guys on here or a guest to talk a little bit more about that. But going back to my couple questions about the basics of fencing, especially your art at fencing, can you tell us a little bit, some basic stuffs about it?
Okay, so learning about European swordsmanship 101. This is a brief summary
Yep.
of approximately 300 to 400 years of development.
Yeah.
So fencing, as it's now commonly referred to and has been for quite a while, swordsmanship in the European context specifically, has always been kind of a binary, two sides of a coin. On the one side is the civilian art, and on the other side is the military. So they've always shared these two faces of a common coin. Okay, so the military, it's been very close. Everything from Napoleon's troops, fencing masters, and the requirements for being for soldiery and for officers. Fencing is right up in there. The Italian Scuola Magistrale. This is, and to this day, the military master academy of fencing, and has been for quite a long time. So what we're talking about is civilian and or military use of a sword, and there are a few different types, but basically your audience can think of them in one or two ways. You got the sharp, long, thin, stabby thing, and then you got the slightly thicker, slightly curved, cutty thing. Okay, so those are the two basic forms. All swords derive off of one of those forms. You're either talking about a mostly straight steel stick that's sharp on one end, or you're talking about a slightly curved steel stick that's sharp on one or both sides. So I focus mostly on the Italian systems because after having studied some of the Northern European, specifically French, there were some things that I found a little bit wanting. So I gravitated over the last many years towards the Italian, specifically the Southern Italian school. A lot of people consider the Southern Italian schools to be the originators during the Renaissance of what we now know as modern fencing. So you're talking about two people with one of these instruments engaging in single combat. So what does that mean? That means you don't want to get hurt, and you want to hurt the other guy. There are some expectations, and there are some ethical considerations, obviously. This would be an interesting conversation to cross walk with, for example, an instructor of Aikido or Aikijutsu, talking about the work of Morihei Ueshiba, O Sensei, right? The whole point about Aikido is, how do we turn these lethal techniques from Aikijutsu into a non-lethal body origami? So, the basic premise is, this adversary in front of me is not going to stop until he hurts or kills me. I need to turn him off. How do I do that? So the golden rule is hit and don't be hit. So one of the things to demystify right away is, well, yeah, but we've seen movies, Dave, and people get stabbed all the time and they're fine. That's not true. Stabbing wounds, unless you're treated immediately, are always going to be lethal. I mean, that's just period. Modern medicine helps a lot. Getting rushed to an ER where you've got a surgical staff waiting for you, that's awesome. That'll help. But stabbing wounds are incredibly dangerous, and historically were always lethal. I mean, obviously there are some outliers. Somebody got lucky. The cutting weapons like the sabers, these tend to counterintuitively be a little bit more survivable. A cut is not necessarily going to mortally wound you. So you got two people, one of these types of swords. Most times this is literally a to the death scenario, although that changed a little bit in the 19th century. That's where the popular to the blood or first blood started to arise. Governments and people started to realize, hey, wait a minute, it's kind of not cool that guys are killing themselves all the time. So maybe we need to stop this dueling stuff. And so the appeasement tried to be made with this first blood rule, and people stopped dying a little bit, but there were a lot of other serious injuries. So it's the art of delivering and not receiving. It's like the most gracious experience you can think about intellectually and physically in your life. And the way that I like to think about it is, I am customizing an experience for you if you're the person in front of me, because everybody's different. Everybody moves differently. Everybody's body is differently. Therefore, everybody's target is different. The way that you sense time, we've been able to calculate this scientifically. People don't experience time the same way as another person. So there are literally hundreds of variables that if you pay attention to, if you are capable of reading and paying attention to the person in front of you, you will learn exactly how to turn them off. And I don't mean to sound morbid, but so in a controlling kind of sense, you have an instrument called a sword in your hand. I need to turn you off in a sense that you can't use that sword anymore to hurt me. And so there are a lot of ways of doing that. The popular misconceptions are it flies out of your hand, or Darth Vader sucks it out of your hand and zooms across the room, or it turns to fire and it's too hot to hold. The reality is, it's an object in space-time, and it's bound by the laws of physics and the person wielding it. So my job is to understand those things, all of the possible permutations that it may possibly move through space-time, and what you're actually capable of doing with it as an operator. So my belief is that the fencer, a skilled swordsman, actually becomes a skilled, immediate judge of human nature and character. That's my job.
So just going to the topic of the different tools a swordsman has, I think the sword that's on your website, which I will put on the video description, I think it's a rapier, right? So is the rapier, is it sharp? Does it have edges, or is it just, explain that versus a saber versus something that I like through the movies and through Japanese anime, the katana blade, and how does that all play in? I know yours is European style, but those are swords itself, right? Now, can you defend versus all sorts of different types of sword techniques and styles, or is it basically catered to the European style?
Yeah, it's like the ultimate Reddit article, right? What would a samurai do against a knight? what would Obi-Wan Kenobi do against?
Yes.
Theoretically, okay, but within the context that we train for and that we study, that we attempt to amass comprehension and skill, it's of like kind. So if I have a rapier, so do you. If I have a saber, so do you. Um, so yeah, let's break it down a little bit. Rapier comes from the Spanish de ropera, which means robe. It is the sword worn with your dress, your everyday carry, EDC, right? That's where we get the word rapier. It's typically long. These were early Renaissance type weapons. The one that I prefer is about 37 inches in blade length. It's sharp at the point. It has quillins that extend beyond the guard. That's used to trap and help defend. And of course, I get a nosebleed on the day that I have a video conference with my good friend Harry. Thanks, dry Missouri air. So that's the rapier. It's typically longer. The rest of the weapons get a little bit shorter. So we have the dueling sword, or the spada di duello. In Italy, this was also known as the smara, or the spada di mara. These are about 35 to 37 inches long. The blade's a little bit smaller. These are point weapons, so they don't have an edge. They're fairly lightweight. They're nimble. A person with skill and dexterity and in decent physical shape and condition can wield one of these with amazing aplomb and grace. The saber is actually a weapon that I personally got into a little bit late in life. I love it. People love to pigeonhole and categorize. And growing up, you were either a foilist, a saberist, or an epéist, and that was it. You couldn't don't cross the streams. But we did away with that, especially in my school. Cross training and making sure that people had competency in all weapon types became important. A saber is a cutting weapon. It's also a thrusting weapon. It's like a razor blade of doom, man. They're wicked fast. The Italian school uses a lot of circular arcing actions from the shoulder. It's not a hacking weapon. It's a slicing weapon. We typically use the word to deliver a cut, but these cuts are more like slices. So then the practice weapon that was popular for the rapier was called the fioretto, the spada d'esercizio in Italiano. And in English, it's known as the foil. And foil just means it's been rebaited, safe for play. Think Shakespeare for that too. And so we've got foils. This is typically what we start new students out on. They're small, they're lightweight, they're very flexible. It doesn't take a lot of physical conditioning to wield them. Then we move on to the smara, or the spada di mara. That's the dueling sword. That's the proper Italian dueling sword. The rapier is a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger. So you kind of, as you progress in skill, you go backwards in time, right? And the saber can really be picked up at any time. The saber it has a larger canonical technical manual, right? It's just capable of more work. So there's more to learn, right? You have to learn your thrusts. You also have to learn your cuts. And there are variations and permutations. So it's kind of exponential. There's more and more of it. So it's a larger course of study. But those are the main weapons that we focus on. The foil is kind of the training ground. The saber, the dueling saber, is it's kind of its own beast. And then the thrusting swords kind of then continue to branch off. You have the dueling sword and the rapier. And some people like to go back further. Now, I tend to stop, as in most things in life, around the age of enlightenment. I think that's really important. Or the Renaissance, right? Like, that was a really important thing. And but some people like to go back to the Middle Ages. They like to go back to like bigger, heavier stuff.
Sure.
That's cool. That's okay, right? The Games of Thrones type stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have it in me, really. It's a kind of a different beast. It doesn't sing and reach out to me like the later dueling swords do. So I consider myself a child of the Enlightenment. I like to try to, it's still 1805, man. It's really important. Beethoven is still rocking the house, and reason is important, and all that good stuff. So, but those are our weapons, right? We got our thrusting weapons, we got our saber, and we tend to stop there.
I I don't know too many master swordsmen. I mean, you're probably the very first one that I know. But one, are there any, or were there any swordsmen that kind of inspired you, and you learned a great deal from them? And then number two,
Hmm.
um, where would you rate the two swordsmen on The Princess Bride?
So The Princess Bride
Yeah.
is a fencer's favorite for a lot of reasons.
Mm.
Not the least of which there are these little. I see you have a study doing Agrippa.
Mm.
There are a lot of these little. So to break that down real quick, if you're watching The Princess Bride and you hear those lines, especially when I learned that my adversary has learned his escapofero, um, we have this kind of place of honor for the treatises of the times. So there are some big names: Capofero, Rodolfo Capofero, Agrippa. Um, to go. Actually one of my old articles pulled up here, but I probably won't be able to find it now. In the 19th century, we have the works of the Scuola Magistrale. We've got Luigi Barbasetti. So, when you get involved in sword circles, you'll start getting wrapped up ultimately in conversations about the treatises.
Mm.
Um, Gives you an opportunity to talk important and at cocktail parties and
Right.
drop names and well, well. So, but you'll see that that's that whole kind of point of that. The banter in The Princess Bride
Mm.
is two students, two devotees of the art and science, uh, and they're able to communicate and they recognize this kinship. Right? They don't have this real need to hurt each other. So what that allowed them to do was to create a choreographed exchange in which uh, the public, for one of the first times, actually gets to like experience it from I think a fencer's point of view. Like
Mm.
we really love this stuff, and it's esoteric, it's arcane,
Mm.
it's cumbersome, it's difficult. Like nobody understands it anymore. Um, but we love it, and if you get involved in it, there's a chance you would too. So the Princess Bride is a favorite, and of course, the ambidextrous joke in there is actually quite funny. A lot of people don't train ambidextrously
Mm-hmm.
in the sword science, but it's lovely. I could probably make you a short list of other sword in film.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely there, and it's not necessarily because it's the best executed or the most beautiful or the most accurate, but it captures, I
Mm-hmm.
think, the spirit of why we love
Why you guys love
the
it?
sword art so much. Um, your first question is really hard, Harry. I grew up a little bit in a vacuum because I started, like I said, in kind of a rec club.
Mm.
So imagine a chess club where nobody really knows how to play that great, but
Mm-hmm.
they all show up and they know the basic moves, but
Mm-hmm.
nobody really gets any better, right? Like you keep playing, but you don't understand anything any better, and nobody's really helping you to learn any
Mm-hmm.
better. It's kind of the opposite of the Queen's Gambit on Netflix right now. And that's what it was like. It was just kind of like it was an opportunity. It was a stepping stone, but there was nobody to model. There was nobody there. In fact, um, there were a lot of bad behaviors. There were, not bad people, just a lot, some bad behaviors. There was a low work ethic. There was a low priority and value placed on understanding what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
This thread kind of continued for years as I bounced around, and I was training up through grad school, and my saintly wife, who endured a lot of this. Uh, and I have to just be eternally grateful to her for giving me the time and space to do this when we were young and newly married and
Mm-hmm.
with children. I was training easily 5 days a week. most of the time. And I couldn't find anybody who was taking it seriously
Mm.
until I reached a point where I had to draw a line and make a decision. I had to either just accept the mediocrity I kept finding, or I had to take a chance and try to figure it out for myself. And that's what I did. I started teaching, and Harry, you're a professional educator. You've got experience. None of us were good teachers at the
Mm.
beginning. You know, our intentions were good, and we were focused on our students, but we had a lot of learning to do, and that's. But I took that chance, and some people gave me, they took a gamble with me, and I've been lifelong friends with many of them. Um, so I started teaching. One of my first main gigs was at St. Louis University. I
Mm.
started up a program there. My good friend, who I just spoke to this morning via Google Chat, um, was Alexis. He was a grad law student at SLU, and he started a student organization which allowed me to continue teaching and working with university students. I refined my curriculum. I worked. We were training, many days a week. And so for years, I had this constant cycle of like, 30 to 60 university students coming through. And so I went from not understanding what I was learning with a group of people who were just kind of waiting around to go for beer and pizza after fencing practice, to working with hundreds and hundreds of young people, young men and women, bringing people in from the community. That was something I immediately tried to exploit at the university. I
Mm-hmm.
said, I want the community involved. I don't want this to just be for the students here. I need them to be involved with people in the larger community.
Well, let me ask you, since you had a lot of SLU students there with you at the beginning, or you had access to, did you ever even think about starting either a club at St. Louis University, or I don't know if they had like intramurals, or even get an official team going?
So we kind of did that. So when Alexa started the student organization, that created an official, you know, container that the university recognized. They got some funds from the coffers of the university to purchase equipment. We officially, incorporated with the university, and we had many students stay with us through, some of them through their whole 4 year stint at the university, some of them only for a semester, and that went on for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And the product of that was basically a national recognition for what we were doing. Now, something that many of your viewers will remember is that in '96, the internet was newish
Mm-hmm.
for most households, and right around '98, we started connecting with other people who were doing the same thing or very close to it. And most of this was happening either in New York or in California. So we were literally your only rest stop between the two coasts for the type of fencing that I eventually started calling classical fencing. Coincidentally, we hooked up with people who are still friends of ours in New England, who were also calling it classical fencing. So we all kind of had this independent origination concept about what we were doing, and we called it literally the same thing. It was very peculiar. So to this day, if you do a Google search for classical fencing, you'll
Mm-hmm.
get quite a few results. If you did that in '98, you'd get like nothing. So this was all happening very quickly. The internet was new. It was connecting a lot of us. We didn't know anything about anybody. We had never met. And so we started traveling. My students at SLU, we started to travel to some of these places, meet some of these people, start fencing some of these people. The first major event that we attended was at the Martinez Academy of Arms in New Jersey slash New York, at their grand assault of arms. And I believe, Harry, gosh, I think that was 99.
Mm-hmm.
I think my daughter was just about a year old.
Wow.
Um, I think that was 99. I'm sorry. I can't remember
Yeah.
when that was. I've got the certificate somewhere, but I won that event. And, and if there are any Martinez Academy students or veterans out there listening or who find this later on, yeah, mea culpa. I was kind of an idiot on the internet in 98. Like maybe some of us, more of us were. And I probably, I could have curbed my tone a
Sure.
little bit in
Mm.
some online forums. But I'm generally a nice guy. I think Harry can attest to that at least.
Sure.
So, these people had to meet me in person, and I won. I won the event, and that was huge because
Mm.
it validated the work we were doing. It was a great introduction. Like it would have been cool if we hadn't, shown up and won, but we did. And so, um, that was kind of the beginning of the formal structure of my school. I realized that I was actually doing something benefiting people and it was working, and other people kind of, like I said, when I was a kid,
Yeah.
other people, you can't fake it. Like what you do, people have to see it and recognize it. You can't, it's not fake news, baby.
No, I totally dig and agree. And again, everybody, you guys are watching HBTV. The show is called My Journey with your host, Harry Bugarin. And my special guest tonight is David Achilleus. And we do have somebody in the chat. Makeup Mugwump says hello, Harry and David. Hello back to you.
Hey,
Um,
Leanne.
so really quick. This is two parts. Um, you talk about it's a combative art that you do practice and teach. What's your take? Without going into a vicious tone, but what is your take? What is your take regarding the sports aspect of fencing and also competition? I know you just mentioned you won one competition, but how important is it to your philosophy in your school? And what is your take or your opinion as far as the sports side of fencing?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. try, try to keep the tone down a little bit,
Okay.
Achilles.
Listen, my beautiful man, Harry. Look, all over the world,
Yeah.
traditional martial arts have gone through evolutions and devolutions. They have been edified and they have been bastardized. So I cannot make any special claims to that experience, except I will say this. Um, some of us find it very important that uh, the foundation or principal techniques and skill sets for an object like a sword uh, has an original intended use, and that you can still understand that, apply it, and wield that object with that intention. So I don't need a rapier to be made of plastic so that it's lighter, so that I don't get carpal tunnel, so that I don't whine at the end of a night of practice, and then ignore all of the other manifold consequences to making that change, right? What happens when you start changing the objects in reality? A sword made of steel becomes made of duraluminum stuff that you can wrap around a pipe, and now it no longer behaves like a sword. It behaves like something else, and once it starts behaving like something else, now you can start doing other stuff with it. You're not bound by those original limitations. So how I kind of think about the whole sport thing, whether it's kendo out of kenjutsu. I mean, look at modern kendo competitions. They're redonkulous.
Hmm.
Now, I don't disbelieve that people enjoy that and find some value in it, but there is a palpable, significant differentiation between the kenjutsu uh, that you're applying to an actual sword object in space time, or a not sword object in space time, like a wrapped up fasces of bamboo, right? So we use real swords, and this is kind of difficult for people to grasp as well. But the way that European metallurgy and sword construction evolved is that you can use a real sword safely to practice with another person. The trick is, Harry, don't sharpen it. That's all you gotta do. Don't sharpen. No. If you sharpen it, then you lose your training partners. They go away. They stop showing up.
Yeah.
But guess what? If you don't sharpen it, they keep coming back, and you keep learning, and you keep having fun. So our sword objects are actual real sword objects. And you brought this up early on in like the photo. My great late friend was my sword cutlerer for a long time, and I am privileged to have the collection that I have from him. And
how many you got? How many swords you got?
not enough. You never have enough. I have a small collection.
Okay.
I it's kind of funny. It's one of those things. It's like the cobbler's children wear no shoes. I watched for years my students amass massive collections, and and meanwhile I've got like 3. How many do I have? I don't know. I have probably a dozen
Okay.
that matter to me. I
Yeah.
have a lot of like student grade gear. Like I'm equipped to teach a group of people with the equipment required for that. But I have a few pieces that mean a lot to me. Denny Denny was my man. He was my Hephaestus, and yeah, he was fantastic. He
Yeah.
knew more about metallurgy and metalsmithing, and had studied the history of sword making and sword forms. And we would always laugh. I had a chat with Denny, and we would laugh because we knew it meant that you were on the phone for like 3 hours, because you just ended up having these ridiculous conversations about everything. But I'll tell you a quick story. One of the last pieces we collaborated on is actually the one I think that you chose as the photo header for this. It's my Italian rapier. It had gone through a couple of iterations, but he sent me after we had another marathon conversation. He sent me a sketch. Denny was an artist. He would always sketch up what he did, and he had binders of all of the work in sketch form. So he sent me this sketch, and it was beautiful. And I really didn't have any corrections to make for it. So when I get the weapon, he ships it to me. I open it up. I swear to gosh, Harry, I took the object, the beautiful, beautiful object, and you could put it like right on top of his sketch, and it matched up to the millimeter.
Wow.
I mean, it was amazing. His filing work, his welding ability, his sense of proportion. He was a genius, and it's a great loss to us all. But he was amazing, and I'm just really thankful that I've got his stuff to pass on to my kids and my son, who's still training with me and involved. So I have a small collection, but they're weighty.
Yeah.
They have a lot of meaning. Yeah.
And how much would something like that actually cost? I mean, not the student grade, the master swordsman's grade, like you have with your Italian rapier.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. Like if I don't know. Like it's literally a one of a kind piece right now. I don't even know what I would value it at if I was to put it on the market or insure it for, which I probably should. I mean, I would say at least $5,000.
Okay.
At least. Anything like so. Yeah, just because it's a one of a kind. Denny's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Some people may balk at that. Okay, you could probably find something in Denny's back catalog on eBay for less than that. I am positive, but I think that's disrespectful.
Yeah, for sure. Just a couple more things before I'll let you go with our time. Um, as far as you know, how you evolved from the 30 years you've been into your art as a student, as a practitioner, opening up your own school, developing your own style. Like any like highlights that you know can tell us about how you evolved and what made you better all around with it.
Ooh. So yeah, a couple of things come to mind right away. You don't have 30 to 35 years experience with people in a very intense, concentrated activity without learning anything. I think otherwise you're kind of an idiot. And I think so. The first one of the first things that comes to mind is personal transformation, watching people change positively.
Mm.
And again, I'm not trying to pull out the dojo flyer here, but it's like and I'm not going to mention any names, but I worked with a young man who came to us. Actually, uh, I could start this conversation about many of my male
Mm-hmm.
students with the same opening line. Uh, this particular young man with like an overwhelming lack of confidence, just
Mm-hmm.
somebody who had decided for himself that this was the best he was. You know, it's just, and it was, I by this point in time of meeting him, of bringing him into the fold, I had been doing this long enough to know that we were going to be good for him. And this guy lost weight. This guy started walking taller. He engaged people. He would look you in the eye. It was a massive transformation. And and also then to start realizing how he saw his potential in life. So he went from somebody who had just given up on himself to, you know, exploring and learning and growing and feeling confident and feeling human and in having that contact and not having somebody just say, well, you fat lazy guy, just, you know, go away. You know, and for our little part, I think just working with people and letting them be themselves and finding themselves is really important. So those personal transformations, I've got endless stories about that. I've got endless stories. I have heartache, losing one of our students. He was just a year or two younger than my son, and he died mysteriously from
Mm-hmm.
a heart complication, in
Mm-hmm.
literally in the middle of the night, and he
Mm-hmm.
was just 16. I just devastated. So
Mm-hmm.
funerals, weddings, children being born, being part of people's lives. It's
Mm-hmm.
that's just I never knew. I never knew. I thought I was just teaching classes, Harry. I thought I
Yeah.
was just doing what I wanted to do, and feeling lucky that other people would come along with me, and everything else happened too. I
Yeah.
married one of my students.
Mm.
I got they wanted me to conduct the ceremony, and I got one of those online marriage licenses, and was the officiant at their wedding. I've had students become, you know, instructors in their own right,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of, so to go from having a student to having a partner or a colleague,
Mm-hmm.
that transformation. So that's been huge.
Yeah.
My teaching has changed massively, um, and my understanding about the art
Mm-hmm.
is just totally different than it was 30 years ago. Um, for the few brain cells that I still have that are
Yeah.
working, you know, it's just totally different. So I think of it now in terms of, like I described earlier, my job is to read and understand the person in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are bad at this are the people who can't stop thinking about themselves. The people who can't stop judging a lot themselves for, oh, I'm not doing it right, or, you know, what if they're looking at me, or that type of stuff. You got to stop that, and you got to start paying attention to what's in front of you, because that's all you have. Unless you're standing in front of a mirror all day, you're looking at other people, you're looking at the world in front of you, and you've got to develop some skills in understanding what that means and your juxtaposition to it. So that's really where I've been in the last like 15-ish years, is in this place where all of the techniques and the skills that we train that have been passed on to us for hundreds of years, it's like a good scotch. It gets
Hmm.
distilled down until the only thing that's left is ultimately significant. It's that's all that there can be. It's just distilled down to its raw form, and it's understanding people. It doesn't matter if it's a sword in your hand, or kali sticks, or a naginata. I mean, imagine training with those old naginata mistresses on the islands, or I swear to gosh, there was one allegedly in Indiana back in the 90s.
Really?
Um, so it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you're in combat arts, if you're in dueling arts, you got to know the person in front of you. And the tool, it could be anything.
Sure.
It could literally be anything.
So in closing, David, just really quick, I mean, do you have any shout outs you want to give out to some people, or do you have any messages for anyone who might be interested in, learning this art?
It's very difficult now. COVID has shut a lot of us down. In fact, I did a cursory memory field trip online to a lot of my friends across the country, and so many of them are shut down or just having to do other stuff right now. First of all, one of my first great fencing friends, Alexis, and his family up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This guy immediately saw something he liked and either believed enough in me or decided to take me for a ride. But it's been awesome, and I'm just happy to know his children now after he got married. It was at his wedding too. Um, on both sides of the coast, I tried to reach out to Ramon and Jeanette Martinez up at the Martinez Academy in New Jersey and New York. They're highly influential. A simple web search online will show you how deep into our culture they've been effective in positive ways. To the Squala Magistrale here in America, our great friends on the West Coast, not far from your hood, up north a little bit, we got Maestro John Sullins at Sonoma State University. We got Maestro Lertz, and all of those great guys out there. Up north, we got we got Sean Hayes up in Eugene, Oregon.
Nice.
One of my one of my first good friends as I started teaching, Kim Moser down in Florida. And obviously my former student and assistant, now in charge of his own school, Red Sun Classical Fencing, based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where my daughter was a student for a while at UNM. Ryan Mank, he was a great assistant. He was willing to let me throw him around and abuse him, and he learned a lot. I mean, he was fantastic. And same with back home in the Lou. Up in the 63105, we got Patrick Capstick and Brian Gunter, my two guys left in St. Louis, kind of holding the fort with Jovari the Spada up there. So yeah, it's a smattering of people. A lot has changed, Harry, in this time. My kids have grown up. I can't see so well without these damn readers. And we just want to get back in the fencing school, get back on those floors, and start throwing some steel around. And for people that want to get involved, it's tough, man. It's tough. There's sport fencing is its thing. It's more accessible. It's ubiquitous. It's kind of out there. It's not for everybody. You're not going to get a lot of learning. You're not going to get a lot of understanding. It's kind of a competition mill. They're looking for people that can perform now immediately with the least amount of input. It's like high capacity, capitalist driven type methodology for martial arts. Like the Uruk-hai in Lord of the Rings, mass production, cookie cutter, stamp them out, get them out there on the field.
Yeah.
I'm not being mean. But it's difficult. I would say do your research, get in contact, look for somebody that that's willing to help. Instead of just treating you like a way to pay their rent or get them a win on the board. Somebody who treats you like a person and is willing to invest and give back and reciprocate that time that you're willing to work for. That's what you want. You want a relationship. You want somebody long term that you can work with, that can train you, and that you can take over. Right? You don't want somebody that's always keeping you down because they got to be in charge. And that's another red flag, right?
Absolutely. Well, Master Swordsman David Achilleus, would love to one day soon, when the COVID stuff does let up, love to take a class with you and show me some basic stuff with your style of fencing. I think that'll be great. But I'd like to say thank you very much. Humble that you were even on this show with me, and I do appreciate your time and listening to your journey and your message. Very inspirational, and I do appreciate it. So thank you, brother. You guys be safe tonight as you guys make it home.
And, the windy road home on the way. Best to you, Eric, man. You give all our love to Sheila and the girls, and you stay well and stay in touch, man.
All right, brother. You have a good night. Thank you again for your time. I'll see you. Well, that was our special guest tonight. My special guest tonight, Mr. David Achilleus, master swordsman out there in Missouri. Always love to bring on people and talk about their journey and their message and what they had to go through. And again, for this series on this channel, my journey, I'm reaching out to martial artists, instructors. It could be in any discipline. Just would love to just chat with them for that hour and talk to them about their journey, about the whys and their inspirations and all that good stuff. So again, thank you for joining me tonight. Hopefully next week I can lock down my next guest and join me again. It should be on Thursday. I'm going to try to lock them down on Thursday. So until next time, you guys stay blessed. And if you haven't already, do me that quick favor. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share, and hit that little bell for any alerts when HBTV is on live. So have a good night.